Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the right now. Checking to make sure the lights all good up above me. Hey, welcome into that one, dude. The top leverage plays. 6 top leverage plays for week 14. What does leverage mean? It means that a player is lower owned compared to their chances of being in the winning lineup or a top scoring, a top 1%, ideally the winning lineup, right? The optimal lineup. So we're trying to find those leverage plays. Last week, it worked out lovely. Miles Sanders was on this video. We ended up getting a lower-owned Jamar Chase, and if he catches a 90-yard touchdown, we're feeling good, but he ended up dropping him. And then we got the man, the myth, the legend, who did it all for everybody in the Discord who watched this video. George Kittle came through for a lot of us. So it was a solid video. And now this week, we have another good amount of people on this list. We got a couple of running backs, a couple of receivers. I'm feeling good about this list just like last week, and a lot of murky injury statuses. Like, this is a massive, we get later in the season, right? Teams this late into the season, only a couple of them having buys like week 4, week 5. So there's injuries piling up, which means that a lot of these lower owned players might even go lower owned than they currently are. So let's break it down. Let's get right into it right now, starting with the first leverage play of the week. It's a wide receiver that resides in the great state of Texas, and that is going to be in Dallas with CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb this week, as of this recording, is coming in at 6% ownership. And you might be saying, there's no way CeeDee Lamb is going to be 6% owned. But then you look at it a little bit. You look at it and you see, oh, CeeDee Lamb is priced right next to Chris Godwin, who is without a doubt, after a 15-reception game, going to soak up the ownership there. At $7,200, I have CeeDee Lamb for 17.2 fantasy points. I mean, this is a very good wide receiver, right? Let's not get it twisted here by any means. This is a very good wide receiver who, I mean, he's as consistent as they come. I mean, let's just look back to week 5. 20 fantasy points versus the Giants. 39 in week 6. And then week 8, he has 20.2, right? Week 7, they get the bye week. Week 9, it's Denver. He only plays 3 quarters. The starters get pulled except for Dak and Malik Turner, 2 late touchdowns in the 4th quarter. He doesn't do anything, but he has 9 targets. Week 10, back up to nearly 30 fantasy points. Week 11 was his only bad game, basically, since week 5, where he played a full game that wasn't related to injury or getting pulled in the 3rd quarter. Week 11, the only game, the full game, 4 targets versus KC. Then week 12, he's hurt on Thanksgiving. Week 13, he comes right back out on 95% of the snaps, fully healthy, and he has a 13 target game on those 95% of the snaps. He leads this team with a 22% target share, and he looks good, and the game environment is good. He's facing a Washington football team right now that their cornerbacks are getting better. William Jackson, Lamb moves into the slot, so he'll be facing everybody. Jackson and Fuller on the outside there, but overall, this secondary is not great, right? Number 25 in secondary. The only reason they've been performing a little bit better, in my opinion, is because their pass rush, even without Sweat and Chase Young, is getting more pressure on quarterbacks. Well, I mean, you get one of the best pass blocking units in the NFL, a top 5 pass blocking unit for Dak. He's going to have time to throw. He's going to find CeeDee Lamb, a 6% owned CeeDee Lamb, who gives you direct leverage, in my opinion, off of the higher owned stacks, specifically that Tampa and Buffalo game, when people are going to play, whether it's in your Tom Brady stacks or your run backs of Josh Allen, they're going to play. They're going to play Chris Godwin. So I'll take my chances with CeeDee Lamb, who is almost as consistent as they come. And since he didn't go for 30 points in the last time out, and he's not Chris Godwin having a 15-reception game. Like, if it was Lamb who had the 15 receptions last week and Godwin only had 16 or 18 fantasy points in his previous game, these ownerships would probably be flipped. I mean, Godwin right now, if you want to see a comparison, you can see it here on Twitter. $7,100 for Godwin, basically the same price, 18.4 fantasy points. So you're getting like an extra point in the projections for Godwin. So that makes sense. Okay, people want to go to him more, but 16% owned. So even if CeeDee Lamb comes in at 8 or 10%, maybe it comes up a little bit with some guys maybe get ruled out. Keenan Allen officially getting ruled out if that happens. I'm recording this on Friday afternoon, by the way, to release on Saturday morning. So some news can still come out. About half of it's come out for these teams' Friday injury reports. But yeah, you're going to be getting a pretty dang good spot, considering he's probably going to be about half as owned as Chris Godwin. And these guys' skill sets, in my opinion, are pretty dang similar. So I take CeeDee Lamb there as a leverage play this week. The Dallas team in general, if you've been following me on Twitter, I put up a tweet about Dallas in general this week. They look really dang good. There's the leverage at almost every single position, including Zeke, if you don't want to go to stacks, especially if Tony Pollard, who has not practiced this week, did not practice all week, a torn foot basically is what he has. I don't think the dude's going to go or be fully himself, which means Zeke looks even better at his price tag. So I'm going to take CeeDee Lamb over 14.5 fantasy points. I have him for 17.2, so almost 3 points more than that, and I'll take that over on prizepicks.com. If you want to take that bet right now, we're running a holiday special. If you sign up for your first time deposit using the code CLASS, CLASS, it is the code CLASS, like you're in school, you will get not only your first bet for free up to $100, but I'll throw in my daily fantasy course for NFL, which is 10 plus hours of videos. It's all pre-recorded. Take it at your own pace. A bunch of downloadables on game theory, how to actually win money, think like a pro, and go through all this stuff. And that's about a $100 course if you wanted to just buy it. So that's going to get thrown in for free, the holiday special, the next week, limited time offer for first time depositors. So be sure to check it out. And you get the $100 bet. So that's what we're going to be doing right there. Little bet. It's basically the best promo we're going to run all year to close out the year. We'll take CeeDee Lamb over 14.5 points for that part of it. So now the next player that we will go to is going to be in one of these game environments, and similar to what we talked about Chris Godwin. Godwin is a fine play. He's going to look good. He's going to go in the slot again, impairment on the outside. There's no reason that should change. That's what they want to do. They want to stretch the field a little bit more and give Godwin space to operate in the middle. I don't know why they have not yet already extended Godwin. They should not let him hit free agency because he's only going to cost a lot more. But Chris Godwin's teammate is going to be lower owned, and I was concerned about Mike Evans, right? Mike Evans, $6,600, 16.5 fantasy points. He's only 7% owned, so about half the ownership probably, if not less than that, but around half the ownership is his teammate Chris Godwin. And I get it, Godwin's the better play, projects out for about 2 more fantasy points. But the better play for cash games is not the better play for GPPs. You have to factor in ownership and factor in leverage. Mike Evans is a much better leverage play than Chris Godwin this week. And he'll get the matchup against the number 1 Buffalo secondary, which was number 1 coming into that Patriots game, so you can't really say that it's skewed, but they don't have Tre'Davious White. Tre'Davious White, who I would assume would be on Mike Evans in this game on the outside with Godwin in the slot, Perriman on the other outside. So that's going to be an instantly easier matchup. I don't think he's going to see Levi Wallace, who is probably their second best cornerback, because Levi Wallace is about 175 pounds. Mike Evans is about 230 pounds. You don't have a 50 to 60 pound difference on a cornerback. So he's probably going to get to play the replacement quarterback, and that's very good for Mike Evans in this game. That replacement quarterback, I assume, based on the depth chart, is going to be Dane Jackson. If you're a Bills fan, you think it's going to be somebody else, I apologize. But Dane Jackson, who's a little bit bigger, he's like 190 pounds still, like a 40-pound advantage for Mike Evans. So that's fine. So what has the performance so far been for Mike Evans? Yeah, he hasn't had the 15 reception game, but he just had a good game. And he missed the 100-yard bonus by about a point, which maybe the ownership would be a little bit higher if he got that 100-yard bonus for people. But I was concerned. I was concerned during this stretch where you saw Mike Evans in only 3 out of 4 games towards the middle part of the season go over 4 targets one time. That's a concern. The volume wasn't getting there. But now over these last 3 games with Antonio Brown not out there, it's starting to come back a little bit, right? You're starting to see 8.7 targets per game, 2 games with 10 or more targets, including last week, right? He's had 17 or more fantasy points in 2 out of 3 games and missed that 100-yard bonus by a yard in the last game last week, finished with 99 yards. So you're getting what you like to see out of him. You're getting the volume back, and that volume fuels a couple of things. It fuels him being a top 5 air yards player in the NFL, which you can check out my tweet reference. We'll put it up right here. It fuels that, right? And that was the most air yards he saw last week since week 5. So there's your upside. Downfield usage, obviously, there's upside to that. And number 2, he's right now top 10 in the NFL with 15 red zone targets. Well, there's upside. Touchdown upside, downfield usage, and the volume has been slowly coming back. Even with Gronk being in these last 3 games, the volume is still coming back. 8.7 targets per game. I like that. Everything's trending. The underlying stats are trending. Still getting the red zone use, getting downfield use, and now he's lower owned in the best game environment. If you're looking for leverage in that game environment, Mike Evans is somehow low owned in what the number 1 game environment of the week, Buffalo and Tampa, at least where other people are expecting based on ownership. For comparison reasons, I don't know how, but T. Higgins is priced up to 6,400. His quarterback's dealing with a messed up body parts right now in hand and all this, and you have 15.2 fantasy points projected for Higgins, and he's 12% owned. So Higgins is coming in with nearly double the ownership as Mike Evans for being similarly priced, for having a less projection and nowhere near the amount of game environment or the quarterback on the opposite side like Evans has with Buffalo and Josh Allen to fuel a shootout, whereas Jimmy G wants to hand that ball off to Jeff Wilson this week or Jermichael Hasty, assuming Elijah Mitchell doesn't play. So yes, I like Mike Evans as another that one dude at the wide receiver position. And now, with that being said, let us slide. How about that? And some tomatoes. Let us slide into a running back now. A running back who's a that one dude. Now, there's a lot of running backs this week who it's hard to find a leverage running back play because it's like the good plays. Like Austin Eckler is probably going to be lower owned. Like lower owned to what he should be. Like he'll be 20% owned this week. You might be saying, oh, he's chalk. No, there's a difference. There's a difference between being highly owned and improper ownership, like good and bad chalk, right? Good and bad chalk. Good chalk, 20% on Austin Eckler, who should be 30% on this week in a lot of contests. Yeah, that's fine to play. Bad chalk is probably like a 22% Antonio Gibson when there's so many other leverage plays around him. McKissick is questionable for this game, but has been limited participant. We'll see if he passes the concussion protocol. That would be bad chalk, especially if McKissick is in my opinion. I don't think you're getting much leverage on that. A guy in that price range, there's Saquon in that price range. There's even Javonte Williams, although Melvin Gordon's expected to play. Some stuff going on, though, right now. Mike Boone in the COVID list right now. He's on the COVID list. We'll see if that affects any other players in that backfield, including Javonte. But the other player in that price range who's just not going to be owned, currently projecting out for 3% ownership, is Chuba Hubbard. And you can sit there and you can laugh all you want, but it's hard to find leverage at the running back position this week, and I think this is a good one. I really do. I've been projected for 13.2 fantasy points at 5,900. That's not great, but that's why he's 3% owned. But let's look a little bit deeper into this. He has a positive 26% run blocking advantage against Atlanta's bottom 10 run defense, and they rank bottom 10 in tackling. Their defensive line is terrible. You get them to come off the bye this week. There's no McCaffrey. That's the reason we're talking about Hubbard, by the way. And I understand Amir Abdullah is back there, and he played a good amount of the snaps and ran routes and basically took on the pass catching role, if you will, in that game. But they're favorites in this game. They're 3-point favorites with a 22 implied total. So Amir Abdullah might not be needed as much. And the whole reason why Joe Brady just got fired, right, during that bye week, he just got fired, was apparently, reportedly, we don't know if this is completely true, but it's because Matt Rule has another guy on his staff from Baylor, a buddy from Baylor, who is his offensive coordinator, and he wants him to be the offensive coordinator because they see eye to eye on running the ball more when Joe Brady wanted to pass. Yeah, believe it or not. So they want to run the ball more, and in weeks 5 through 8, 4 weeks, the last 4 games that he started Chuba Hubbard as the main primary running back without Christian McCaffrey, you ended up seeing this, right? Week 5, 30 opportunities, 21.5 fantasy points. Week 6, 21 opportunities. I'm reading it right here, 13.5 fantasy points. And then week 7 and week 8, 17 opportunities, 10 fantasy points. That was his worst performance. 26 opportunities and 14.1 fantasy points. So during that 4-game stretch, he averaged 23.5 opportunities during that time, right? Clearing double-digit fantasy points each time and having a ceiling game of 21.5. So this is a decent upside spot, I would say, in terms of being a low-end running back. So if you're looking for a low-end running back, you don't have to. In that range, there'll be moderate ownership on Saquon, so you can just go there. There'll be high ownership on Javonte and Antonio Gibson, in my opinion. There'll be lower ownership on James Robinson, who's in the space, so you don't have to go here. But if you're looking for a leverage running back play, or you want to get different at running back, you need a spot to get different, you want to choose running back, I do think Hubbard is the guy to go to, in my opinion, especially off of all those other guys who will pick up ownership. I currently right now have Hubbard over 52.5 rushing yards. They literally just fired a coordinator because they want to run the ball more. So I like that. I like their offensive line advantage in this matchup. I like the fact that they're favorites in the divisional matchup, over 52.5 rushing yards. You might get a 20 attempt game here, and all you have to get is a 2.5, 3 yard per carry game from Chuba Hubbard. We take that. We take that, the over on Prize Picks. Again, be sure to use that code CLASS to get the free access to the course and the free bet up $200 so you can use some of these props if you indeed wish to. Let's go back now to a wide receiver. We have a couple of wide receivers left that I want to talk about. Let's go back to a wide receiver, a 1 to 2% owned wide receiver this week. So 1 to 2% on wide receiver this week that is practicing in full. He's coming off of IR, right? He's not technically, as of this recording, designated to return, but he's been practicing in full. So I'm sure they're going to activate him to the active roster later this week, probably on Saturday afternoon, maybe even by the end of the day today. But Julio Jones is $5,400. I have him for 12.6 fantasy points. The projection's not going to look nice. It's just not, right? But he's 2% owned as of right now. His team has a 26.5 implied total against Jacksonville, who, oh yeah, is a bottom 5 secondary, number 27 in the NFL according to Pro Football Focus, who, oh yeah, Julio has moved into the slot a decent amount this year, so he'll probably move into the slot. He'll probably see all 3 of these Jacksonville cornerbacks. Ford in the slot, who is allowing an 80% catch rate to wide receivers, and he'll have a massive advantage on size-wise. And then he'll get Campbell and Lawson on the outside. Campbell, who's allowing 1.63 yards per cover out. That's not good, by the way. And then Lawson, who's allowing a 75% catch rate. And oh yeah, Julio has a massive size advantage on all these dudes. The speed and the 225, 230-pound Julio Jones. So you get Julio coming back, and he's healthy. There's no A.J. Brown. There's no Derrick Henry. So who is his target competition? Well, his target competition is going to be Nick Westbrook, who's not good, right? He's been fine if you're talking about a cheap fantasy player in DFS, but not good. Chester Rogers, not good. Anthony Fursker, who his head coach Vrabel said that Anthony Fursker is now a special teams player. It was weird. It kind of got swept under the rug. That's not good. What is good is that this should be a high target share game for Julio Jones. Julio Jones has only really played in 3 games this year where he's played like 2/3 of the snaps because he was healthy. Week 1, 6 targets. That's what A.J. Brown in. Week 2, 8 targets. A.J. Brown for part of that game, he got 21.5 fantasy points. And in the last week that we ended up seeing him when he got hurt and left that game early, he saw 4 targets on 76% of the snaps when we saw him in prime time. So that's like the Julio Jones experience. You're getting like 2 full games this year. So anything you're judging him on is really not that accurate for the most part, in my opinion. And now you have this game where he's kind of like the only athletic player relative, like only stud, only really solid elite player to target in this game. I think Tannehill is going to throw it his way. And based on all the practice tapes, he looks completely fine. He's able to cut. He looks healthy for now. We know he's never fully healthy, but for now, everything looks good to go. And for comparison reasons, he's the exact same price, the same price principle that we talk about in that DFS course that you can check out, of course, a lovely offer, but he's the same price as Landry. Landry I've projected for about a point more, 13.6 fantasy points, and double the ownership. Actually, no, not double, 10% ownership compared to Julio, 2%. 5 times the ownership for Landry, who I don't think has as high of a ceiling, who I think is in a bad spot in terms of his quarterback being hurt still, separated shoulder, a low total environment. He himself is not a high upside player out of the slot, whereas Julio is a high upside player and can actually win you a slate. So give me Julio Jones there. I'm waiting on for some props to come out. They're not yet on the boards because he's not officially on an active roster, but he's practiced in full the last 2 days. So I'll be tracking the props. We can talk about that on Sunday for him. Now there's 2 guys left, and it's 2 wide receivers who I think are solid plays. Normally I only add like 1 more player here, but I'm going to add 2 because I think there's some really solid plays this week. These are kind of like the best leverage plays at these positions. And I think it's important to share that with all you lovely people right here. And by the way, to the lovely people right here, if any of you guys like golf, if any of you guys are fans of DFS golf, betting on golf, playing golf yourselves, whatever it might be, we have covered golf in the past in this channel. It's just hard to stay consistent once NFL comes because I don't want to flood the channel with so many videos. So I decided to create the golf betting network, and that is going to be right here. You can see it. You can subscribe to it. If, of course, you're just interested, the Golf Betting Network right here. You can subscribe starting January 1st when golf returns is when the first pieces of content will come out for the Tournament of Champions in Hawaii, the Century Tournament of Champions. So I'll drop a link in the description below. Look, I'm actually matching it right now, the Golf Betting Network, with my shirt on. But yeah, if you want to check that out, you can check it out. There'll be a podcast feed as well. I'm very excited about that. I'm excited for the challenge to grow a brand new network in the space of golf, and I will be focusing moving forward into 2022 and more so 2023 and beyond on NFL like we are right here, and just football in general if other leagues come up, and golf, PGA primarily, but I'm excited for that. So if you want to support over there, you like my content, you want to watch that, that's where it's going to live moving forward, not here. And again, I fully own that, so it'll be similar style to start with, and then we'll move into interviews and collaborations and things like that. I'm excited for a little bit of a breath of fresh air from a different type of sport to cover, so I'm excited for that. So 2 more wide receivers to talk about, and the first one I want to talk about is in a very interesting spot because his teammate was my favorite leverage play last week in George Kittle, and now this week I think George Kittle is probably the worst tight end play with the price increase, better tight ends now on the slate, and the fact that he's highly owned. People are trying to chase that. They felt like they missed out last week. Well, too bad. You already missed out. I'm sorry, right? If you watched this video, you didn't miss out. Luckily for you, right? You won the Dollarusis. Hopefully, you took that advice. Now, this week, I think his teammate Brandon Ayuk is the leverage play. Ayuk is 5,800. He's not cheap. I got him for 14.7 fantasy points at 5% projected ownership. But because of that low ownership, that's where my interest comes in. Because Ayuk is going to give you leverage on that price range in general. We'll talk about some other guys in that range. Some of the names we've already mentioned, he'll give you some leverage off of, but also his own teammates. His own teammate who probably Jeff Wilson, if there's no Elijah Mitchell, or Mitchell, whoever is the running back, is going to pick up ownership for the 49ers. They're both fairly priced, whoever it is, if Mitchell is out with a concussion, and Kittle's picking up ownership. And there's likely to be, it's pretty doubtful at this point, that Debo plays. So Brandon Ayuk, who apparently buried the hatchet with his head coach and got better at his communication skills, that was the problem. He wasn't communicating, he wasn't showing up to practices, he wasn't saying where he was, so they were they were basically disciplining him by not giving him his full role in some of these games. He's now apparently not doing that. And he finds himself with a 25 implied team total, has a fine matchup. Like, these cornerbacks individually have been solid. Like Mike Hilton in the slot, Eli Apple on the outside's actually been good. Awuzie, these guys from different teams, former Steeler, former Giant, former Cowboy. These guys have been solid. Like, they've been solid. But overall as a unit, like, they're nothing great. And I think Brandon Ayuk can take advantage of that, a man who moves all around the field to find the best matchup. Brandon Ayuk has been the main wide receiver on this team. Like, even when they want to run the ball a ton, and I'm hoping that in this game it can turn, maybe propelled into a shootout. 2 teams who want to run the ball. We're hoping maybe Mixon's illness, he has to sit out. They don't run as much, so they throw a little bit more. But he's seen 6+ targets in 5 out of his last 6 games. Some of those games where Debo was playing, he was still operating as a number 1 wide receiver as Debo transitioned to more of a running back, if you will, in some of those games. So I like it. He's coming off of that season high snap share. He's been solid, right? You're talking about 21.5, 13, and 9 fantasy points these last 3 games. He's coming off of his worst game in the past month, which is going to lead to even less ownership at this price tag. Now, out of all the names I'm talking about here, he's probably my least interested one because he is still somewhat expensive at 5,800 for a run-first offense. But again, no Debo, and he has leverage this week, no doubt about it, for the upside that Brandon Ayuk has. You compare him to Brandon Cooks, who has Davis Mills throwing him the ball, Tyrod Taylor bench. He's $5,700, Brandon Cooks, who projects out for the exact same fantasy points, basically 14.5 versus 14.7 for Ayuk, and he's 10% on double the ownership. Now, I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in Brandon Cooks with Davis Mills at double the ownership than Brandon Ayuk, who, in my opinion, I mean, I like Brandon Cooks, but in my opinion, I think Ayuk has more upside. So that is Mr. Brandon Ayuk. Now let's talk about the final guy. And there's a reason strategically, as we pace through this video, I left this guy for last, because it's going to kind of show you my ideas on kind of the slate in general, but this quarterback situation in this game environment. Now, this man also resides with another wide receiver we've talked about on this slate, right? And by the way, there's a subscribe button if you're not already. Check it out. If you don't know, now you know. But this man resides with CeeDee Lamb in Dallas. Is it Michael Gallup? No. Is it Cedric Wilson? No. Is it Noah Brown? No. He's on IR and likely done for the season. Maybe playoffs we see that guy. It's Amari Cooper at $5,900. Ladies, gentlemen, please, please, please. Amari Cooper's 5% owned against the Washington football team and that not-so-great secondary with a 14.8 fantasy point projection. And that projection might be low, if anything, because we haven't really seen the real Amari Cooper lately. We haven't. Amari Cooper, week 1 was healthy against Tampa Bay. In week 1, he played very well. He had a big game. And he hurt his ribs week 2. And basically, week 2 up until like a week or 2 ago, Amari's ribs were banged up. And then what happens a week or 2 ago, weeks 11 and week 12, he's out because he's on the COVID list. And then week 13, he was clearly limited on Thursday Night Football. He only played a third of his normal routes. Still had 2 catches for 50-something yards, but he was clearly limited because of residual effects from COVID. So we haven't really seen Amari Cooper since week 10 when his ribs were still an issue, right? He ended up having 4 receptions for 51 yards in that game. Week 9 is the game where they get blown out against the Broncos. He and the rest of the starters outside of Dak only play 3 quarters of football. Week 8, he has a big game. So it's really been since week 8 is the last time he had a big game, but he's dealing with injuries. He's getting pulled. He hasn't been in for 2 to basically 3 weeks because of the COVID on Thursday Night Football limiting him. So I don't really remember the big Amari Cooper games, but he hasn't hasn't been his full self. And now apparently in an interview over the past week, his ribs feel completely fine. He's over the COVID stuff. So now you're getting actual Amari Cooper, who should be a $7,000 wide receiver in pricing at $5,900 at 5% owned in a good matchup. That good matchup against the number 25 secondary, a guy who will move all around the field, move into the slot for the better matchup at times. So I really like Amari Cooper this week. And because I like Lamb and Lamb's low owned, and I like Amari, and we put up the tweet earlier, and we'll put it up again if I didn't, of the entire Dallas Cowboys this week, just how low owned they are, including Gallup to an extent if you really want to take a shot at Millie Makers. But these two stud receivers with Dak losing a lot of his ownership to Herbert in that similar price range, and or people going up to the Brady and Josh Allen Bucks and Bills game. So this Dallas team is giving you good leverage. I like the Dallas team this week. That's why I left them for last. So you're not two Cowboys in a row you're going to talk about? No, we start and we end the show with one. That's strategy right there, baby, to get through the content. But I like these guys. For comparison reasons, let's compare him to Mike Williams. Williams has been testing negative Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm expecting him to play right now unless something comes out on Saturday. And Mike Williams is a great play. Don't get me wrong, but he's going to be highly owned. I have him at 16% ownership. I'm not even sure if he doesn't go up to 20% ownership. I have him for 17.2 points at $6,000. So similar price range, definitely projects out better. I basically got him for like 2 to 2.5 more points than Amari Cooper. But when you look at these guys' ceilings, Mike Williams and Amari Cooper's ceilings, they're very similar. Amari's is actually higher for me. Amari Cooper's ceiling is higher than Mike Williams for me this week, even without Keenan Allen out there. And Amari Cooper is a third of the ownership right now. So look, I mean, you can play the Chargers stack if you want to, if you feel good about it, if it looks good in projections, if your favorite content creators are talking about them. I'm just here to tell you that Justin Herbert is going to be the highest owned quarterback. Mike Williams might be the highest owned wide receiver. Austin Eckler is going to be the highest owned running back. And Jared Cook might be the highest owned wide receiver or tight end. And oh yeah, Josh Palmer is going to be the highest owned guy below $4,000 at the wide receiver position. So everybody's owned. So you're already fighting an uphill battle of ownership leverage in your stack. I don't want to do that. I'd rather go to the guys who have similar upsides in their stacks and similar projections in Dallas. That's just where I'm going. So I take Amari over 11 fantasy points. We took his teammate CeeDee Lamb over 14.5. I am high on the Cowboys this week. It's not because I live in Texas. No, they're just looking real good. I ain't even no Cowboys fan. But I will go to a game, though, if they end up playing that bad man Aaron Rodgers in the postseason. But otherwise, thank you for tuning in today. There you go. There's all the schmacks for you. That one, dude, the top leverage plays, the top 6 leverage, a little bonus for you today with them Cowboys having 2 receivers in there. I appreciate you tuning in. Before you go, that subscribe button is there that we talked about. We're about to hit 45,000 subscribers, maybe even by the time you're watching this. If not, make sure to get us there. I appreciate you all a ton. And a big reminder, the best deal we're going to be doing is a limited time only right now for probably the next week or so for a holiday deal. You get my course, which is $100, 10 hours of videos and a bunch of stuff in it. You get that for free, including a free bet up to $100 from Prize Picks if you sign up using the code CLASS. It is very simple. There's a link down below. CLASS like you're in school, CLASS. If you're interested in golf, you can check out the Golf Betting Network on YouTube. That will also be pinned up down below. That is my now second channel for all my golf content starting in 2022, starting right away on January 1st. Appreciate you all a ton. Hope you have a lovely rest of your day. When you get all them dollarooskies and they say, where did these dollarooskies come from? How are you winning the dollarooskies? Your brother, your mother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle, your neighbor, yourself, your whatever it might be, your pet rock. When they say, where'd you get all those dollarooskies? You look at them straight in the eye and you say, I got them because I know football and football knows me. Appreciate you for tuning in. I'll see you all in the next one.